The first time I got handcuffed on a front porch, I was wearing a suit, holding a leather folder, and thinking about interest rates, not criminal charges, but to that officer, none of it mattered. I was just a problem he thought he needed to control. My name is Marcus Hale. I'm a real estate agent in the Minneapolis, St. Paul suburbs. And on one bright October afternoon, a neighbor's phone call and a cop's assumptions turned a routine showing into the kind of story people argue about in the comments. By the time it was over, that officer would lose his badge, the city would write me a check, and I would still be the one who has to think twice every time I stand on a porch in a nice neighborhood, you know what I mean. It started like any other good day. Clear sky, cool air, trees on fire with fall colors, the kind of afternoon that makes buyers fall for a place before they even walk in. My listing was a craftsman-style house in an affluent suburb, 3 bedrooms, original hardwood updated kitchen, a backyard that opened onto a strip of woods, quiet street, neat lawns, the postcard version of stability. The seller, Mrs. Zelina Gable, was 73, a retired judge, small but sharp white hair, glasses on a chain, a calm voice that carried the weight of 40 years in that house. She had raised kids there, buried her husband, watched neighbors come and go, and now she wanted to downsize and move closer to her daughter, so she called my office on a referral, and we clicked right away. We talked numbers and memories, staged the rooms, put the house on the market, and within 10 days, a young doctor couple relocating for hospital jobs had set a 3 p.m. showing pre-approved and excited. That Thursday, I did what I had done for more than 20 years. I arrived early, walked through the place, turned on lights, opened curtains, checked the thermostat, straightened whatever needed straightening, the quiet ritual that turns a building into a showing. Then I stepped out onto the front porch to wait. Charcoal suit, white shirt, burgundy tie, leather portfolio, leaning against the railing with disclosures and comps inside my phone in my hand while I checked messages. For me, that porch was just my office for the hour, the spot where I shake hands, ask about the drive, make a little joke about Minnesota winters. For someone 3 houses down, staring through a window, it was apparently something else. I did not know he had called 911 until later when lawyers got involved and I heard the recording. He told the dispatcher there was a suspicious male on the porch of a vacant house, just standing there in a suit looking around like existing in a suit was enough to be suspicious. The dispatcher did her job, asked if I was trying to break in, if I had a weapon, if I was yelling or threatening anyone, and every time he said no. But he kept going back to one line: "He doesn't belong in this neighborhood, something feels off." He never said black, but if you've lived my life, you hear it anyway in the pauses and the emphasis on belong. That call went out to Officer Greg Peterson. Mid-30s, 7 years on the force on paper, just another patrol cop. Later I would learn his file already held a trail of complaints from black and brown residents who said they were stopped, questioned, or searched for vague, suspicious reasons. The department had sent him to bias training, written him up, checked the boxes they talk about at press conferences, but a slideshow on fairness does not change what someone sees when they look at you. That afternoon, he pulled his cruiser up in front of my listing, hit the button on his body camera, stepped out and walked toward the house with his hand resting on his belt like he was already walking into a crime scene. I heard the cruiser door slam and his boots on the walkway, looked up from my phone and saw him coming up the path. "Afternoon, sir, mind telling me what you're doing on this porch?" he said. And if you read those words, they sound polite, but the tone told me I was already guilty in his mind. I went into professional mode, the same calm voice I use with nervous buyers and nosy neighbors, because this was not my first time talking to police at a property. "Of course, officer," I said. "My name is Marcus Hale. I'm the listing agent for this property. I'm waiting on the buyers. They should be here any minute. I have the lockbox code. If you want to verify anything, you can call my office or the owner." I held out my business card, nodded toward the for sale sign with my picture on it, pointed at the electronic lockbox hanging right there on the doorknob. He barely looked. "You live here?" he asked, no curiosity in his voice, just a challenge. "No, sir," I answered, trying to keep my tone steady. "I'm representing the owner, Mrs. Gable. She hired me to sell the home. I'm here at her request. I can call her on speaker right now if you'd like." He let out a little scoff, the kind that says he is done listening, and said, "Yeah, I don't think so. Go ahead and turn around for me. You're being detained." For a second, my brain just stopped. "Detained for what?" I asked. And on the recording, you can hear both disbelief and that tired kind of anger that comes from knowing exactly why, even when nobody says it out loud. He did not answer, just stepped closer and repeated louder, "Hands behind your back." Every talk my parents ever had with me about police ran through my mind in fast forward. Keep your hands visible. Keep your voice calm. Do not argue on the sidewalk because later it is your word against his report. So I turned around. I turned toward the door of the house I had been hired to sell, put my hands behind my back on the same porch where I had just adjusted the welcome mat and let him snap cold metal around my wrists. The cuffs went on tight, that little ratcheting sound landing in the center of my chest, and while he pulled my arms up just enough to remind me who had power, I kept talking not really to him, but to the camera on his chest. I'm a licensed realtor. My name is on the sign. You can verify everything. This doesn't make any sense, I said, trying to keep my voice even. He checked the cuffs, looked around like he had just neutralized a threat, and all I could think was, if this is how he acts with a body cam running in broad daylight, what is he like when nobody is watching? Right about then, somebody was. On the video, you see a silver sedan pull up behind his cruiser, then a dark blue SUV. Out of the sedan step my buyers, mid-30s, still in work clothes, folders in their hands. They look up expecting to see me waving from the porch, and instead they see me in handcuffs facing the door like I broke in. Their faces go from excited to confused to shocked in a matter of seconds. Mia's hand goes to her mouth. Tyler stops where he is on the walkway, and for a moment, none of us move. Then the SUV door closes and the twist of the story steps out. The driver is an older white woman moving a little carefully but with purpose. White hair, glasses, cardigan. It's my client, retired Judge Zelina Gable. She starts up the path with a polite smile, ready to meet the people who might buy her home, and then she sees me, sees the cuffs, sees the officer, and that smile disappears so fast it might as well have been cut. "Officer, what in God's name are you doing?" she calls out, and in that one sentence you can hear every year she spent on the bench. "Ma'am, I need you to stay back," he says quickly, reaching for his script. "We got a call about a suspicious male. I'm just doing my job." She does not stay back. She walks right up to the bottom of the steps and looks at me first. "Marcus, are you all right? Did he hurt you?" she asks, and that simple question feels like someone opening a window in a room with no air. "I'm okay," I tell her, "just apparently suspicious for standing where you asked me to be." She nods once, turns to him, and the temperature on that porch drops. "For the record, officer," she says, "that is Mr. Marcus Hale. He is my real estate agent. He is here at my request to show my home to those buyers. Right there I am, Judge Gable. I own this property, and I want you to explain on your body camera what probable cause you had to put him in handcuffs." On the audio, you can almost hear his confidence fall apart. "We got a call, ma'am, about a suspicious individual. I was just..." He starts, and she cuts him off as neatly as if they were in court. "Suspicious how?" she asks. "Because he is a black man in a suit on a porch with a for sale sign, or because you saw him commit a crime which you still have not named?" Silence. You hear his breathing, you hear cars in the distance, but there is no real answer. She lets it hang, then says calm and deadly, "Here is what you are going to do. You are going to remove those handcuffs right now, then you are going to stop talking because your body camera is running, and I will be requesting that footage from the chief of police personally, and if you keep trying to justify this, you are going to bury your own career." Yeah, that happened. Suddenly, the same man who was so sure of himself 90 seconds earlier is fumbling with his keys, unlocking the cuffs, mumbling something about keeping the neighborhood safe. I bring my hands back around, rub the red marks on my wrists, look him in the eye, and this time he can't quite hold my gaze. He backs down the steps toward his cruiser while the judge stands between us like a shield, and my buyers still stand there on the lawn holding their folders like props in a play that suddenly got dark. Nobody is in the mood to walk through the house after that, so we cancel the showing. They say they'll call me later, and we all leave knowing that address will never be just an address again. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and typed out everything for internal affairs, every question, every answer, every time I asked, for what? Mrs. Gable filed her own complaint and backed it up with a phone call to the chief she had worked with for years. And when a retired judge says, "Watch that tape," people tend to listen. The investigator pulled the body cam video, watched me calmly identify myself, and offered to verify everything watched. Peterson blow past all of that and go straight to cuffs, then pulled his file and saw 7 prior complaints from people of color describing similar stops. Suddenly, this was not about one bad decision. It was about a pattern that had finally been caught on camera. 2 weeks later, Peterson was fired for misconduct, and violating my rights. The department put out a statement apologizing to me, promising better training and clearer rules about stops and detentions, and I hired a civil rights attorney and filed a lawsuit against the city and against him personally. The city's lawyers watched the same video, read the same file, and realized a jury was not going to buy any story they tried to tell, so they settled a six-figure payment and some written policy changes that look good on paper. People asked me if I felt like justice was served, and the honest answer is partly because at least there were consequences this time, but no check and no press release erases the feeling of standing cuffed on a porch in front of your client and your buyers for the crime of doing your job. The story hit local news. The clip of me being cuffed and the judge taking him apart in real time ran on every station, and anchors ended their segments with the same question: what if she had not arrived when she did? I think about that more than I like to admit. Without her, without the buyers, without the body cam, I probably go to jail on a made-up charge like trespassing or disorderly conduct, my mugshot lives online forever. And the career I spent 22 years building starts to crack because one neighbor decided I did not belong where I was standing. That is what people mean when they say working while black. Your license, your reputation, your suit, none of it guarantees people will see you as a professional instead of a threat. I still sell houses. I still like handing over keys and getting pictures of kids in backyards I once measured, but I also still feel my chest tighten a little when I pull up to a listing in a mostly white neighborhood and see a curtain move or a cruiser at the corner. I park more carefully now, pay attention to how long I stand on a porch alone. Sometimes ask clients to meet me outside, so I'm not just a guy on a porch. To whoever is watching, that is the invisible tax a lot of us pay just to feel a little safer while we work. So now that you've heard this from me, instead of a headline, I want to ask you something. If you were driving down that street that afternoon and saw what my client saw, a black man in a suit handcuffed on a porch, a cop who cannot name a crime, would you have kept going and told yourself there had to be a good reason, or would you have stopped and been a witness? Do you think firing that officer and cutting a settlement check is real accountability or just damage control? Do you think the neighbor who called that day feels any responsibility for what almost happened, or does he still sleep fine believing he protected his block? I really want to hear what you think, so tell me in the comments if you think this ended the way it should have, if you've ever been profiled just for trying to live your life, or if you've ever stepped in when you saw somebody else being treated like this. And if you believe stories like mine need to be heard and not brushed off as exaggerations, hit like, hit subscribe, share this with someone who still says that kind of stuff doesn't happen in good neighborhoods, because I'm standing here telling you it does, and sometimes the only difference between a ruined life and a hard lesson is who decides to speak up.